Hey guys, welcome to the Meiosis notes, chapter 13.1, 13.2. We are going to start talking about heredity. And what heredity is just the transmission of genes from one generation to the next. And when we're passing traits down, or when we're passing our heredity or genetic material down from one generation to the next, when we do it sexually, there's going to be more variation. Variation is a change in genes as they're passed down. And so when we have sexual reproduction, we have the genes from two different organisms coming together to produce something new. And so there's going to be something brand new that's never existed before. And so therefore, this is going to create variation. And so genetics is the study of heredity and how how variation is inherited. So there are many different aspects to genetics, but in this chapter, we're going to be talking about how genes are passed on and also how they maintain the chromosome count. So how is it that if we're taking the genes of one person and another and bringing them together, how come we don't have the number of genes increasing or the number of chromosomes increasing every time? So if an organism reproduces asexually, so that means just on their own, then the offspring is going to be an exact copy. And we call this a clone. Clones are not things that occur in just sci-fi movies. Clones occur in our everyday life. A lot of plants are clones. They reproduce on their own. And so there's not much variation in this process. It is not helpful if you're trying to overcome obstacles in a changing environment. However, it is helpful for a species to survive if a mate is difficult to find. And so if you live in the desert and there's not a lot of other organisms around, there's not other organisms that are in the same species as you, that's going to be difficult to find a mate. And so maybe it is preferable for that organism or that species to be able to reproduce asexually. Also, organisms that are sessile, meaning that they can't move, they're going to also probably or oftentimes they will reproduce asexually. And so sexual reproduction takes 50% of the genetic material from each parent, and it creates something genetically brand new. And this gives not the organism, not the individual, an opportunity to adapt, but the population to adapt to a changing environment. And we're going to talk about that more in depth later, but remember that this doesn't give an individual the ability to adapt. It gives a population the ability to adapt as in a changing environment. And so parents pass down traits in heredity units, if you will, called genes. And genes are a segment. So if we look at this chromosome here, right here, it's a segment of DNA that is going to specify a specific protein. And so it is the action of these proteins that are going to result in a trait. So what is it that this protein does? Does this protein, in a very simplified way, does this protein give you blue eyes? Does this protein help you to replicate your DNA faster? Does this gene help you to have bigger teeth? So this is going to be this protein is going to result in a trait. And so the central dogma, the big idea of biology, of heredity, is that genetic information starts in the DNA, and it is going to be transcribed to RNA, and it is translated into proteins. So it starts in DNA, and it results in proteins, which result in a trait. And so the specific location on a gene on a chromosome is called the locus. So if we're looking for this specific gene right here, this is the locus of this gene, or the spot where this gene exists. And so humans have 46 chromosomes in their somatic cells. These somatic cells are their body cells. And so most of whatever is in a sex cell is a body cell, your somatic cells. And so 46 chromosomes. So here we have 23 pairs of chromosomes. And so 23 times 2 is 46. And so you have 2 first chromosomes, one from mom, one from dad. You have 2 second chromosomes, one from mom, one from dad. 2 third chromosomes. I'm sure you get the point. And so these chromosomes are going to be placed, so we can see this picture, it's a karyotype, we call this a karyotype, and we organize the chromosomes on here based on size, so the largest first, the pattern of their colored bands, and the position of the centromere, so right here, or that point where they're going to attach to their sister chromatid most closely. And so we can see that this right here is a chromosome, and we have this is not the sister chromosome. A sister chromosome is going to be an exact copy. So this is a single copy right here. One of these is a single copy of a chromosome. This is from mom. And then when you go through DNA replication, you'll have 2 of these, and they will be sister chromatids, and they have exactly the same information. And then you have, this is from dad. And so here, this one, your first chromosome and your first chromosome from mom and your first chromosome from dad, these are called homologs. So we have 23 homologs, 23 sets of chromosomes. And each homolog in a pair control the same genes. So if you have a gene right here, if we have a blue band right here, we'll have a blue band right here. And so they're going to control the same gene. So if, let's just very basically say that the eye color gene is right here on this chromosome. Well, then the eye color gene is going to be on this chromosome here. So you have the same types of genes, or the same genes on each homolog, or each chromosome, but they are going to be different versions. So this might be a blue-eyed version, and this might be a brown-eyed version. And so you're going to have different versions. You're going to have 2 versions of each gene. So one set of the homologs, or one set of the homologous chromosomes that don't follow the standard rules are our sex chromosomes. And so we have X and Y chromosomes down here. If you are a male, you have an X and a Y. If you're a guy, you have a Y. And if you're a girl, you have 2 X chromosomes. So females have XX, males have XY. The Y chromosome is quite a bit smaller and is lacking many genes. And we'll talk about this in more detail when we talk about sex-linked traits. But we're going to leave it there for right now. So most of the genes that you get from your sex chromosomes are going to come from the X chromosome, which is what you get from your mother. So your mother will always give you an X chromosome. All of the other 44 chromosomes are referred to as autosomes. If it is not a body cell or a somatic cell, then it's a sex cell. And we have lots of different words that are going to mean the same thing here. So we have gametes, means sperm and eggs, means sex cells. And so we can use these words interchangeably. And so these gametes have half the genetic complement. And these are also called haploid cells. Think half the amount of DNA, or haploid cells. And we represent the amount or the number of chromosomes in a species with the letter N. So in humans, N equals 23, and that's going to represent the gamete number, or the number of chromosomes within the gamete. So N equals 23. However, in our somatic cells, 2N equals 46, because we get 23 from mom, from the egg, and 23 from dad, from the sperm. So 2N equals 46. If it's a banana, N equals 11, because in a banana plant's pollen, there's going to be 11 chromosomes. And in the egg, it will be 11 as well. So 2N will equal 22. Haploid cells are halved, H-A-L-V-E-D, halved, in the process of meiosis. This is one of the big ideas of meiosis is that we need to remove half of the genetic material from a somatic cell or from a germ cell, so that when the sperm fertilizes the egg, the zygote will have 46 chromosomes. And so if we didn't do this, the number of chromosomes every time something is fertilized would increase. And then we would have so many chromosomes, it would never fit in the nucleus. So all eggs contain an X and an X. So from your mom, there are 2 X chromosomes. So your mom can only give you an X chromosome. And everybody has a biological mother that has given them an X chromosome. However, 50% of the sperm from the male or from the father is going to have a Y chromosome. The other half of the sperm are going to have an X. And so it's a 50% chance that an offspring is going to be male, and it's a 50% chance that the offspring is going to be female. And that is dependent on which sex chromosome is given by the father. Is the father giving an X chromosome, or is he giving a Y chromosome? All somatic cells in the body divide through the process of mitosis. So when you start off as a single egg, a zygote, you start to divide by mitosis. So you have a sperm and an egg, they come together, they make a zygote, and at that point, you're going to start dividing to become 2 cells, 4 cells, 8 cells, 16 cells, so on, so on, so on. And so you become a person. And that person, that adult that has reached puberty, is then going to have germ cells. And so germ cells are going to be what will mature and divide into sex cells. So germ cells become eventually, germ cells will go through meiosis, and they will have, HALVE, the number of chromosomes. And so meiosis starts with 46 chromosomes, so germ cells have 46 chromosomes. Germ cells are found in the ovaries of females, and they're found in the testes of males. And so females, most of meiosis is going to occur while the baby is still in the embryo. Eggs are produced mostly while they're in the embryo, and then as a female approaches puberty, there's going to be more maturation, and then before the egg is released, there'll be more maturation, but most of meiosis is going to occur while the baby is still an embryo. In males, the meiosis is going to begin at puberty, and it occurs on demand and prior to ejaculation, potentially for the rest of their life. So when a sperm fertilizes an egg, the zygote will have 46 chromosomes, and it is considered a somatic cell. It divides through mitosis, and it matures into an embryo. And so we see this pattern where we have mitosis, then meiosis. Mitosis, then meiosis. We see that we have a zygote that's going to go through mitosis. And then when we have adults, we have, with germ cells, they're going to produce in their ovaries, in their testes, they're going to go through meiosis, and they're going to produce sperm and egg. So they're going to go through here, they're going to go through meiosis, and they're going to produce a sperm and egg. And then there's fertilization. And after fertilization, there's going to be a somatic cell. So we see this alternation of mitosis and meiosis in animals. When we're talking about some plants and some algae, there's a different version of how this goes. We call this alternation of generations. And so there are 2 generations. We have the sporophyte generation, and we have the gametophyte generation. So down here we have the sporophyte generation, and I like to remember this because this is when spores are made. And here we have the gametophyte generation, and I remember this because this is when the gametes are made. And so in a plant, or in some plants and algae, the sporophyte generation is multicellular. So here this is like a regular old plant. And what it's going to do is it's going to produce spores. And these spores are going to be released into the into the atmosphere, into the environment, and they're going to, instead of fertilizing, they're going to actually divide by mitosis. They're going to grow. So these spores are going to grow into a gametophyte. This would be like sperm or eggs growing and dividing into a separate entity. Same species, but just a haploid version of it. And so this gametophyte is going to be composed of haploid cells. And this gametophyte is going to continue to divide by mitosis, and it's going to produce gametes. It's going to produce sperm and eggs, or if it's a plant, it's going to produce pollen and eggs. And so the pollen is going to fertilize eggs in the environment, and then we have fertilization. When we have fertilization, that produces a zygote. So our N becomes 2N. And so 2N, so we have a zygote with 2N, and that zygote is going to divide through mitosis. So here we have pollen that is going to pollinate a seed, and it's going to turn into pollinate an egg, and it's going to turn into a seed, and that seed's going to land in the ground, and it's going to divide by mitosis, and it's going to grow into a plant. And that plant here is going to then go through meiosis, where it's going to produce spores. And spores are then going to divide by mitosis and go through this process again, creating a gametophyte. And so these are not all plants. Not all of our vascular plants are going to go through this. These are some plants, and some algae go through this alternation of generation. And so that is going to be it for these notes. Let me know if you have any questions.